"Can you fix our door?" asked the alien child. The human janitor didn't ask questions. Eli had worked on the orbital station for more than 10 years, and during that time he had learned one important thing. No job was too small to matter. While most people on the station rushed past, focused on experiments, trade, or interspecies diplomacy, Eli spent his days with a mop in one hand and a toolbox in the other. He cleaned corridors, polished floors, and fixed small malfunctions in equipment that no one else wanted to touch. He was a janitor, but in the quiet way that only someone who paid attention could be, he kept the station running. It was a routine evening. The neon lights of the station's corridors hummed softly, casting long shadows on the metallic walls. Eli moved slowly, methodically, pushing his cleaning cart. Every surface had a purpose, every corner a story. A scuff mark on the floor might indicate someone rushing to an urgent meeting. A panel left slightly open could mean a technician had been distracted. He noticed things that others ignored because he always looked beyond what seemed important at first glance. Tonight, as he was finishing a section near the research wing, he heard a soft sound. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct, a quiet shuffle accompanied by the faintest click of what seemed like metallic claws on the floor. He turned his head and froze for a moment. A small figure stood at the end of the corridor. It was unlike any species he had seen before, and that was saying a lot. The child was short, no taller than 4 human feet, with luminous skin that shifted color like the reflections of a nebula. Its eyes were large, dark, and round, filled with curiosity and something else he couldn't immediately identify. Fear? Confusion? Eli wasn't sure. The child took a hesitant step forward and spoke in a voice that was surprisingly melodic. "Can you fix our door?" Eli blinked. For a moment he thought he had misheard. "Your door?" he asked, unsure what to make of it. The child nodded eagerly, pointing down a narrow maintenance corridor. The direction it indicated was restricted. Only authorized personnel and certain technicians were allowed there. Eli's instinct told him to ask questions, to seek identification, to figure out why a child was wandering alone in a restricted area. But something about the child's expression, its wide, trusting eyes, made him hesitate. Instead of asking questions, Eli nodded slowly. "Okay. Let's go see the door." The child's face lit up with relief, a bright glow pulsing along its skin. It scampered ahead, and Eli followed, pushing his cleaning cart like a buffer between them and the rest of the station. He noticed other staff in the distance looking curious but quickly turning away. Humans and aliens had learned long ago that Eli was unusual. He rarely complained, rarely spoke out of turn, and always did his job without fuss. They assumed he was harmless. When they reached the corridor, Eli saw the door immediately. It was unlike any human technology he had ever encountered. Sleek and smooth, it seemed to hum with energy. Panels shifted gently across its surface, and faint lights danced along the edges. He could feel the energy through the soles of his boots. The child pointed at the control panel beside the door. Its gestures were small, precise, and strangely human-like in their intent. Eli crouched and examined the panel. Buttons and symbols were unfamiliar, but the design suggested logic, patterns, sequences, and interconnections. His fingers hovered over the controls, tentative as he studied it. "Don't worry," the child said, its voice calm but encouraging. "It's just stuck. You can fix it." Eli smiled faintly. There was something about the child's confidence that was infectious. Humans often relied on tools and manuals. Aliens often relied on instinct and advanced technology. But here, the child relied on him, and for some reason, he trusted that he could rise to the challenge. He opened his toolbox and pulled out a set of standard tools: screwdrivers, pliers, a small voltage tester. To anyone else, these might seem rudimentary compared to the alien technology before him. But Eli had learned over years that understanding the principles behind a system was more important than having the fanciest tools. As he worked, he noticed the child mimicking his movements. It picked up small objects nearby, attempting to understand how they fit together. Its curiosity was endless, and it watched every adjustment he made with wide, fascinated eyes. Eli realized that while he was fixing the door, the child was learning from him. There was an elegance to this process, a silent exchange of knowledge across species, powered by patience, observation, and trust. The first problem Eli noticed was simple yet clever: a mechanical jam. Some small gears had shifted out of alignment. The alien child pointed toward one of the corner panels, and Eli realized that a minor adjustment there would relieve the pressure on the main mechanism. With a few careful turns of his wrench, he heard a soft click. The panel moved smoothly. The child's glow pulsed brighter as if to say, "Yes, you did it." Encouraged, Eli continued. The control panel had multiple layers, some purely digital, some mechanical. He pressed buttons with intuition, sometimes pausing to watch the patterns that appeared. Slowly, he began to understand the logic behind the alien design. There was rhythm and repetition, much like a puzzle, and once he recognized the pattern, he could anticipate the next step. It wasn't long before other staff began noticing. Aliens leaned in from a distance, whispering among themselves. Humans peered from around corners, curious at the sight of a janitor working on technology that normally required highly trained specialists. Some aliens whispered doubts. A human? Can they even understand it? But Eli ignored them. He had a simple rule: focus on the problem, not the opinions. As he worked, he spoke quietly to the child. "What happened to the door?" he asked. The child tilted its head, considering the question. We didn't know. It just stopped. We can't open it, and the hallway beyond is important." Eli nodded, accepting the answer at face value. Sometimes simple observation was enough. He didn't need explanations, only the task. He tightened a small screw, adjusted a hidden latch, and tested the door. It budged slightly, a sound of resistance breaking. The child gasped, and its color shifted, brighter than ever, a joyful spectrum of lights. Minutes stretched into an hour, but neither Eli nor the child seemed to notice. Eli's mind was sharp, focused on every detail. He felt the familiar satisfaction of a challenge approached calmly and solved with logic, patience, and careful observation. The child's energy kept him alert, almost playful, as if their partnership made the task lighter. Finally, the door began to respond fully. Lights along the edges glowed steadily, panels aligned perfectly, and the hum of energy shifted to a soft, steady tone. Eli gave it a gentle push, and the door slid open smoothly, revealing the corridor beyond. The child clapped its small hands, and a faint melodic sound escaped its lips, laughter in the purest sense of joy. Eli smiled, feeling an unusual warmth. He had done his job, yes, but he had done more than that. He had earned the trust of another being, one completely different from himself, simply by applying human skill and ingenuity. Other aliens, now gathered at a respectful distance, nodded in quiet approval. Some offered soft murmurs, others simply observed. The message was clear: humans were capable of more than they were often given credit for. Not through weapons, not through force, but through thought, patience, and cleverness. The child turned to Eli, eyes shining. "Thank you," it said simply. There was no hidden agenda, no request for reward. Gratitude was enough. Eli packed his tools and began walking back toward his cleaning route. The child followed briefly, then scampered off toward the open corridor, ready to rejoin its own kind. Eli didn't ask questions. He never did. Sometimes the simplest act, listening, observing, and helping without judgment, was the most powerful. As he walked, he reflected on the moment. He had not performed a heroic act in the traditional sense. No one's life had been in immediate danger. No battle had been fought. Yet in those quiet moments, a human had bridged a gap that many thought unbridgeable. Technology, biology, and culture separated species on the station. Yet his small actions had shown that understanding and ingenuity were universal languages. By the time Eli returned to his cart, the lights of the station dimmed for the night cycle. The corridors were quieter, the hum of machinery the only companion. And somewhere down the hallway, a small alien child lay sleeping, safe behind a door that no longer barred its path. Eli resumed his work, quietly sweeping and polishing, but something had shifted. There was a subtle awareness in the air among both humans and aliens that maybe, just maybe, humans were more than janitors, more than assistants. They were problem solvers. They were adaptable. They were capable of unexpected brilliance if only anyone took the time to notice. And Eli, as always, didn't ask for recognition. He had done what he could, and that was enough. The orbital station continued its endless rotation around the planet, lights flashing in the distance, ships docking and departing. Inside, the corridors hummed with life and activity. And in one small section, a janitor and an alien child had silently proven a truth that echoed quietly but powerfully across the station. Sometimes, simple acts of skill, patience, and trust could open doors, not just in walls, but in hearts and minds. After fixing the door, Eli returned to his usual duties. The corridors of the orbital station were quieter now that night had settled, but he could still hear the distant hum of engines and the soft chatter of night shift workers. For most people, the day had ended, but Eli's work never truly stopped. Even when others slept or rested, the station needed attention, and he was content with that. The alien child, whose name Eli still did not know, had vanished down the corridor. But its presence lingered like a soft glow, a reminder of the unexpected challenge and the small victory he had achieved. Eli wiped his hands on a rag, pausing to think. It had been unusual, yes, for a human janitor to be asked to fix an alien door, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this was not the first time something unusual had crossed his path. Eli had always been able to adapt. He had a knack for understanding machinery, no matter how complex, and a patience that many of his colleagues lacked. Humans, he often mused, were remarkable in their ability to improvise. Where aliens relied on pre-programmed logic or specialized equipment, humans could solve problems with what they had, using observation, reasoning, and creativity. Tonight had proven that once again. The next morning, Eli arrived at his post earlier than usual. Something in the station felt different. There was a subtle tension in the air, like electricity before a storm, though the sensors showed nothing unusual. As he moved through the corridors, he noticed small groups of aliens gathering quietly, whispering to each other. Their eyes followed him, but they kept their distance. Eli ignored them, focusing instead on his tasks. The floors needed polishing, maintenance panels needed inspection, and there were reports of minor malfunctions in several sections. It was routine, and routine was comfortable. But then, as he reached the maintenance corridor near the door he had fixed the night before, he noticed something strange. The door, which had functioned perfectly when he left it, now pulsed with irregular lights. It was not malfunctioning in the conventional sense. It was alive, in a way that Eli could not immediately understand. Panels shifted subtly, almost like it was breathing. He knelt and examined the control interface. Symbols he had memorized the night before now moved in sequences that were new, almost as if the door was trying to communicate. Before he could investigate further, the alien child appeared again, quietly stepping out from the shadows. "It doesn't open properly," the child said, its voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. "We tried, but the pattern changed." Eli nodded slowly. He did not ask why the door had changed or why the child was back. He had learned long ago that sometimes questions were less important than action. "Show me," he said. The child guided him to the main panel, pointing at sequences that pulsed rapidly. Eli studied them carefully. The door's behavior was complex, far beyond any human technology he had encountered outside of highly specialized labs. Yet the logic behind it was clear if one observed closely. It operated on a system of repeating patterns, a combination of mechanical responses and adaptive algorithms. Eli realized that the door had a form of intelligence. It could learn, adjust, and respond to environmental changes. Eli began to work. This time, it was not a matter of simple mechanics. He needed to understand the algorithm the door followed. He took a small tablet from his cart, the only device he had capable of recording patterns, and started noting the sequences. He tapped buttons, observed the responses, and adjusted minor settings. The child watched intently, glowing brighter with each correct adjustment. Hours passed. Eli's hands were covered in grease and sweat, and his mind raced with calculations and observations. The other staff had begun to take notice, peering at the scene from around corners. A few humans whispered admiration. Some aliens murmured skepticism, doubting that a human could handle such a sophisticated system. Eli ignored all of them. His focus was complete. He had a door to fix, and that was all that mattered. At one point, the door emitted a soft hum, then froze completely. The lights along the edges blinked irregularly, and the panels shifted in a way that suggested a security protocol had been triggered. Eli's pulse quickened. He realized that the door was not just a door. It was a gate, protecting something valuable or sensitive. The child's expression grew anxious. It will not open," it whispered. Eli took a deep breath. He had encountered difficult situations before, but this was different. The door was almost sentient, capable of adjusting to his interventions. He needed to think like it, to predict its responses and guide it rather than force it. He studied the sequences again, looking for patterns in the irregularities. Slowly, methodically, he began pressing buttons in the order that matched the natural rhythm of the system. The child watched and tried to mimic him, but its small fingers hesitated. Eli realized that this was a moment of teaching as much as fixing. He spoke softly, explaining his thought process in simple terms, even though he knew the child could not fully understand human language. "Observe the rhythm," he said. "Every time it shifts, it wants balance. Follow the balance, not just the light." Minutes became an hour, sweat dripped from his brow, and his fingers ached from constant movement. Yet with each correct sequence, the door responded more favorably. Panels aligned, lights stabilized, and the hum became steady once again. Eli's heart raced. He was close. Finally, the last sequence fell into place. The door's panels glowed fully, and a soft chime indicated it was ready. Eli pushed gently, and the door slid open, revealing a corridor filled with shimmering energy. The child clapped its small hands, letting out a melodic trill that echoed in the metallic space. Eli smiled faintly, exhausted but triumphant. The other staff, who had been watching silently, now approached. Some expressed admiration openly, others nodded quietly. The aliens, initially skeptical, now looked at humans with newfound respect. Here was a human, a janitor by title, who had understood and solved a problem that seemed impossible. Not with force, not with complex alien technology, but with patience, observation, and clever reasoning. The child approached Eli and touched his hand lightly. "Thank you," it said. Its glow pulsed warmly. Eli nodded. Words were unnecessary. The act itself was sufficient. As Eli packed up his tools, he noticed something else. The door's adaptive system had left traces of its logic open, almost like a gift. If someone were to study it carefully, they could learn from it, understand the principles of its design, and perhaps even improve their own systems. Eli realized that this door, in its own way, had trusted him. And in response, he had respected it, treated it as more than just a mechanism to be fixed. The day continued, but Eli could not shake the feeling that something significant had begun. The child followed him briefly, then disappeared back into its own world. Yet every now and then, Eli caught glimpses of the door's glow through the corridor. It seemed to pulse gently, a silent acknowledgement of their shared effort. Later, Eli walked past other sections of the station. Humans and aliens alike moved around him, busy with their own concerns. But he noticed subtle changes. Aliens who had previously ignored human staff now nodded politely, sometimes asking for advice on minor technical issues. Humans whispered quietly, expressing surprise and admiration. Eli did not seek recognition, but he felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that humanity's ingenuity was being noticed, even in small ways. He returned to his routine, polishing floors, checking maintenance panels, and ensuring the station remained clean and orderly. Yet in his mind, he was already thinking ahead. The door had been more than a simple repair. It had been a puzzle, a test, and a lesson all at once. Eli realized that the station was full of challenges like this, waiting for someone willing to observe carefully, think clearly, and act with patience. That evening, as he finished his rounds, the child appeared once more. This time it did not speak. It simply gestured toward the open corridor, inviting him to follow. Eli hesitated. The section beyond the door was restricted, potentially dangerous, and he had no clearance. Yet he also knew that sometimes, to understand fully, one had to take risks, not reckless ones, but measured, thoughtful risks. He followed. The corridor beyond was unlike any part of the station Eli had seen. The walls shimmered with energy, panels floating slightly off the surfaces as if suspended in a magnetic field. Symbols moved fluidly across the walls, some glowing, some fading, creating patterns that suggested a living language. Eli's curiosity was piqued. He realized that this was more than a maintenance corridor. It was a demonstration of alien ingenuity, a system designed to adapt, protect, and perhaps teach. The child guided him to a small console, pointing at symbols that pulsed in a sequence. Eli studied them, recognizing patterns similar to the door's adaptive logic. He began to manipulate the controls, testing responses, and adjusting sequences. The child watched intently, learning, observing, and occasionally glowing with excitement when a correct adjustment produced the desired effect. Hours passed, yet Eli remained focused. Each sequence, each adjustment, revealed more about the system's logic. He realized that human intuition, combined with careful observation, allowed him to navigate complexities that even trained aliens found challenging. His understanding grew not from manuals or prior training, but from patience, reasoning, and an unwavering willingness to adapt. By the time Eli finished, the console had stabilized. The energy in the corridor pulsed evenly, the patterns aligned, and the system responded predictably. The child clapped again, and for the first time, Eli felt a deep sense of pride, not for himself, but for humanity. Humans had a capacity for understanding, for solving problems, and for bridging gaps that no one had fully appreciated. As Eli returned to his cleaning duties, the station seemed quieter, calmer, yet more alive. He knew that what he had done would have ripple effects. Aliens would speak of a human who understood their technology, who solved a problem without force, without shortcuts. Humans would see that their skills, their patience, and their ingenuity were more valuable than they often realized. And somewhere in a restricted corridor filled with shimmering energy, a small alien child rested, safe and content, knowing that the human janitor had made a difference. The morning light filtered through the station's observation windows, casting long reflections across the polished metal floors. Eli moved his cleaning cart along the corridors, as he did every day, but there was a tension in the air he couldn't ignore. The unusual events of the previous nights, the alien child, the malfunctioning doors, and the adaptive corridors, had left a lingering sense that something bigger was unfolding. Eli paused near the corridor he had repaired, looking at the panel that now glowed faintly with a steady rhythm. Everything seemed normal, yet he could feel a subtle vibration through the metal floor. It was not dangerous, not yet, but it suggested movement, change, and perhaps a hidden complication. Humans often relied on instinct as much as knowledge, and Eli's told him to remain alert. The alien child appeared suddenly, almost out of nowhere, running lightly across the floor. Its glow was brighter than usual, a shifting spectrum of colors that seemed to indicate urgency. It will not open fully," it exclaimed, pointing toward the main door he had worked on. "Something is wrong inside," Eli frowned. He had thought the door stable. Its systems had been balanced, its sequences aligned. But adaptive systems could change, evolve, and even challenge human and alien understanding alike. He nodded calmly. "Show me what's happening," he said, gathering his tools. The child led him to the door. As they approached, the humming intensified and the lights along the panels flickered irregularly. When Eli tested the mechanism, the door resisted, shifting slightly before locking again. He realized immediately that this was no ordinary mechanical failure. The system had triggered an internal security protocol, likely designed to prevent unauthorized access. Other staff began to gather. Aliens peeked around corners, whispering in low tones, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some human technicians glanced over, doubtful that a janitor could handle the challenge ahead. Eli ignored all of them. He had learned that human focus was best maintained by blocking distractions and concentrating on the task. He crouched to examine the control interface. The symbols pulsed in complex sequences, far more advanced than anything he had seen before. The system was adaptive, analyzing his actions and responding in real time. It wasn't designed to be defeated by brute force. It required observation, patience, and logic, the kind of thinking humans excelled at. Eli's fingers hovered over the panel, testing small sequences carefully. The child watched intently, its glow pulsing in rhythm with the door. "It's like it's alive," the child said softly, a note of awe in its voice. "Yes," Eli murmured, "but every system has a pattern. It's just a matter of understanding it." He began recording the sequences with his small tablet, noting the timing, color changes, and shifts in panels. With each observation, he could predict the next response. The key, he realized, was not to force the door, but to align with its logic, to move in harmony with the adaptive system rather than against it. Hours passed. Sweat dripped from Eli's brow as he tapped buttons, rotated knobs, and adjusted small levers hidden within the interface. The child mirrored some movements, learning, observing, glowing brighter with each small success. Together, they became a silent team, human patience and creativity guided by alien intuition and curiosity. Suddenly, the door jolted violently, and a soft alarm sounded. The humming shifted into a higher-pitched tone, indicating that the security protocol had escalated. The panels began to retract slightly, sealing sections of the corridor. Eli realized that if he made a wrong move, the system would lock down completely, trapping them inside or worse, triggering alerts that could summon station security. He paused. Breathing deeply, he examined the interface again. He noticed subtle clues: a small panel that moved in rhythm with the alarm, a series of lights that blinked differently from the others. It was a pattern within a pattern, a secondary sequence the system used to indicate the next safe move. Eli smiled faintly. Humans had a gift for noticing patterns that others overlooked. It was their adaptability, their willingness to improvise, that gave them an edge in situations like this. He adjusted the controls carefully, matching the secondary sequence, and the alarm's pitch lowered slightly. The panels stopped retracting. The child clapped its hands softly, and Eli felt a surge of confidence. He had bought himself time, but the system still resisted fully opening. Minutes stretched into an hour. The door seemed to test him at every step, creating new sequences, shifting lights, and subtle mechanical obstacles. Eli did not panic. He moved methodically, recording each change, testing responses, and making small corrections. The child remained by his side, offering guidance through gestures, glowing in encouragement, and providing a silent reminder that trust could bridge even the widest gaps. Other station staff watched in awe. Aliens whispered among themselves, exchanging surprised glances. Some had doubted that humans could interact with adaptive systems designed specifically for advanced alien species. Now they were witnessing a human excel where others might fail. Finally, Eli identified the final challenge: a sequence loop designed to trap intruders. The lights blinked in a repeating pattern that seemed impossible to break. The child tilted its head, concerned, its glow dimming slightly. Eli studied the loop carefully. Humans had a habit of thinking outside the expected patterns. He realized that the system assumed rigid responses. By introducing a small, deliberate pause and then pressing buttons in an unexpected order, he could disrupt the loop without triggering further lockdowns. He did so. The door responded immediately. The lights stabilized, panels aligned perfectly, and the alarm ceased. A soft chime sounded, confirming that the system had accepted the human solution. Eli pressed gently on the door. It slid open smoothly, revealing the corridor beyond. The child's glow pulsed with joy, a melody escaping its lips in celebration. Eli allowed himself a small smile, wiping sweat from his brow. He had done it. Not through force, not through brute strength, but through careful observation, logic, and the quiet ingenuity that humans possessed in abundance. As he packed his tools, station security arrived, not in anger but in cautious curiosity. They had been alerted to the alarm but found the situation under control. The senior alien officer nodded approvingly at Eli. "You have unusual skill for a human," it said. Eli merely shrugged. Recognition was not important. The task was complete. The child, standing nearby, reached out and touched Eli's hand. Its glow pulsed warmly. "Thank you," it said simply. Eli nodded. He had learned long ago that actions spoke louder than words. As he returned to his cleaning rounds, he noticed subtle changes in the station. Aliens who had once doubted humans now exchanged glances, considering possibilities. Humans who had watched silently whispered to each other, recognizing that their species had a unique ability to solve complex problems creatively. Eli did not seek praise, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. Humans had shown, once again, that their ingenuity, patience, and adaptability were qualities worth respect. Later, Eli paused near the corridor he had unlocked. He realized that the station, for all its advanced technology and alien sophistication, was not just a place of science and engineering. It was a living system, full of challenges, opportunities, and lessons. Humans, he thought, were uniquely equipped to navigate such a world, not because they were the strongest, not because they were the fastest, but because they could think, adapt, and innovate in ways that others could not. The alien child appeared once more, glowing softly, and gestured toward the corridor beyond the door. This time, Eli followed without hesitation. He had come to understand that sometimes, to truly solve a problem, one had to step beyond the familiar, embrace uncertainty, and trust in one's own reasoning. The corridor beyond was even more complex than before. Panels floated, symbols shifted fluidly, and energy flowed in patterns that seemed almost alive. Eli's curiosity surged. He approached a control panel and began to study it carefully, noting sequences, testing responses, and learning the logic behind the system. The child observed, imitating movements, glowing brightly with understanding. Hours passed in quiet focus. Eli discovered hidden sequences, adaptive responses, and subtle failsafes built into the system. Each discovery reinforced a simple truth. Humans were capable of understanding and interacting with systems far beyond their usual scope, not through force or shortcuts, but through careful observation, logic, and creative thinking. By the time Eli finished, the corridor's systems had stabilized. Energy flows were balanced, symbols aligned, and the environment responded predictably. The child clapped, a melodic sound echoing softly. Eli allowed himself a brief moment of pride. He had done more than fix a door. He had navigated an adaptive system that challenged even the most advanced minds, demonstrating the quiet brilliance of human ingenuity. As he resumed his cleaning duties, the station felt subtly changed. Humans and aliens alike had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans were no longer just helpers or maintenance staff. They were problem solvers, innovators, and collaborators capable of bridging gaps that others had assumed insurmountable. Eli did not seek recognition, but he understood that the perception of humanity had shifted, ever so slightly, across the station. And somewhere in a corridor filled with shifting energy and glowing symbols, a small alien child rested, safe and content, knowing that the human janitor had made a difference once again. The station was quieter that day, though not in the usual way. The hum of machinery continued, the lights glowed steadily, and the crew moved through their routines. Yet there was a sense of curiosity and anticipation lingering in the air, as if the events surrounding the janitor and the alien child had left a subtle but undeniable impression. Eli moved through the corridors with his cleaning cart, observing the change, though he did not allow it to distract him. Work came first, as always. The alien child appeared once more, running lightly across the floor, glowing softly. This time it did not ask for help. Instead, it gestured toward the corridor that Eli had unlocked the night before. Its eyes conveyed urgency mixed with excitement. "There's something new," it said in its melodic tone. We need to show you." Eli nodded and followed. He had learned over the past few days that the child was not just curious. It was perceptive, intelligent, and observant. Its instincts often guided him to solutions before he realized the full nature of the problem. The corridor beyond the door shimmered faintly, energy flowing in intricate patterns along the walls and floor. Eli studied it carefully. The system had changed again, subtly, like it was adjusting itself to new conditions. The child led him to a console at the center of the corridor. Symbols glowed softly, pulsing in rhythm, while small energy panels floated along the walls. Eli knelt and began to examine the interface. Unlike the previous nights, the system now seemed aware of his presence. It responded to his gestures and touches with subtle shifts, almost as if it were testing him. Eli realized that this was more than maintenance, it was a form of communication. The adaptive system was intelligent, designed to interact with those who approached it, to evaluate understanding, and to respond accordingly. Humans often excelled in such situations because they could think flexibly, adapt quickly, and recognize patterns others missed. Eli's mind focused sharply. He began testing the sequences, observing responses, and noting variations. The child watched, glowing brighter as he worked. It was learning from him, but more importantly, it was participating. Its presence reminded Eli that trust and cooperation could solve problems that no single being could manage alone. He made small adjustments, pressing sequences in deliberate patterns, and the system responded, its energy flows stabilizing slightly. Suddenly, a soft alarm echoed through the corridor. Panels shifted, blocking certain paths. Eli recognized the protocol immediately. The system was testing him, ensuring that only those who truly understood its logic could proceed. The child's glow dimmed slightly in concern, but Eli remained calm. He had learned to navigate such tests through observation, logic, and patience. He studied the patterns carefully. There were secondary signals embedded within the primary sequences, subtle cues that indicated the next correct step. Eli aligned his movements with these cues, anticipating the system's responses. The panels shifted again, this time allowing a path forward. The child's glow brightened, and it chirped softly in excitement. As he progressed, Other station staff began to notice. Aliens peeked from nearby corridors, whispering among themselves. Some were skeptical, unsure why a human was involved in such a delicate system. Others watched quietly, intrigued by his methodical approach. Eli ignored them. He had long ago learned that human focus was a tool, and distractions could jeopardize even the simplest task. Hours passed. Eli moved carefully through the corridor, testing panels, adjusting sequences, and observing the system's responses. Each step required patience and reasoning, as the adaptive system continued to challenge him. He realized that the corridor itself was a learning tool, designed to teach those who approached it carefully and thoughtfully. Humans, with their curiosity and adaptability, were uniquely suited for such tasks. Finally, he reached the central console. The symbols pulsed rapidly, forming complex sequences that seemed almost impossible to interpret. Eli studied them, recognizing subtle patterns within the chaos. He began to manipulate the controls, aligning the sequences with the natural rhythm of the system. Slowly, the energy flows stabilized and the pulsing lights synchronized. The child clapped its hands, a soft, melodic trill escaping its lips. Eli allowed himself a small smile. He had succeeded again, not through force, but through observation, logic, and human ingenuity. The system, it seemed, had recognized his efforts. Panels retracted, energy flows balanced, and the corridor hummed gently with a steady rhythm. Other staff began to approach. Aliens who had doubted humans now observed with quiet respect. Humans whispered among themselves, acknowledging the ingenuity of one of their own. The child approached Eli and touched his hand lightly, its glow pulsing warmly. "Thank you," it said simply. Eli nodded. Actions, he knew, spoke louder than words. As he packed his tools, he noticed subtle changes in the corridor. Energy panels that had been unstable now pulsed gently, aligned with the rhythm he had established. The system seemed to acknowledge his understanding, as if granting a form of trust. Eli realized that this trust was mutual. He had respected the system, treated it carefully, and in return, it had allowed him to navigate its challenges successfully. Later, as he resumed his cleaning duties, Eli reflected on the events of the day. The station was full of challenges, many hidden beneath layers of technology, rules, and procedures. Humans, he realized, were capable of navigating these challenges not through raw strength or advanced tools, but through creativity, observation, and trust. His work with the adaptive corridor had demonstrated this clearly. The child appeared again in the evening, glowing softly, and gestured toward a section of the corridor that Eli had not explored. "There is more," it said, its tone a mix of curiosity and urgency. Eli understood. The system continued to evolve, and new challenges awaited. He had learned to trust his instincts, to observe carefully, and to act with patience and intelligence. These skills would guide him through whatever came next. Together, they moved into the new section. Panels floated along the walls, symbols shifted fluidly, and energy flowed in complex patterns. Eli knelt to examine a control interface, noting the sequences and testing responses. The child watched intently, glowing brighter with each correct adjustment. Their partnership had grown stronger, trust had become the foundation of their teamwork. As they progressed, Eli encountered a particularly difficult sequence. The panels shifted rapidly, almost unpredictably, and the energy flows pulsed with intensity. He realized that this was a higher-level test, designed to challenge even the most capable problem solvers. He paused, observing the patterns carefully. Humans had a unique advantage in such situations: the ability to adapt, improvise, and think creatively when faced with unexpected challenges. Eli began to manipulate the controls with deliberate precision. He introduced small pauses, adjusted sequences in unexpected ways, and observed the system's responses. Slowly, the panels stabilized, the energy flows balanced, and the symbols aligned. The child's glow pulsed brightly, a clear signal of success. Other station staff had gathered quietly, watching in awe. Humans and aliens alike recognized the significance of Eli's work. Here was a human, a janitor by title, who had demonstrated skill, patience, and intelligence in a system that challenged even advanced alien minds. His quiet, methodical approach had earned recognition without seeking it. As Eli returned to his cleaning duties, he noticed subtle changes in how others perceived him. Aliens who had been skeptical now nodded politely, acknowledging his abilities. Humans whispered among themselves, admiring his ingenuity and focus. Eli did not seek praise, but he understood that the perception of humanity had shifted slightly. Humans were capable of more than most realized. The child appeared once more, gesturing toward the corridor they had stabilized together. Its glow was steady and warm, a sign of trust and understanding. Eli followed, knowing that the system still held challenges ahead. He had learned to trust his instincts, rely on observation, and act with intelligence. These skills would guide him through the evolving environment and through any future challenges the station presented. By the time the evening cycle began, the station hummed with energy and life. Eli finished his rounds, satisfied with the state of the corridors and systems. He paused for a moment near the corridor he had repaired, observing the soft glow of the panels and the rhythmic pulse of energy. It was a quiet reminder of the day's accomplishments and the subtle impact of his work. Humans, he realized, had a unique ability to solve problems creatively, adapt to new challenges, and earn trust through patience and skill. The events of the past few days had demonstrated this clearly. Eli had not acted out of heroism or desire for recognition. He had acted out of curiosity, patience, and a commitment to doing his work well. Yet in doing so, he had shown that humanity was capable of bridging gaps, building trust, and achieving understanding in ways that others might overlook. As night fell, the child disappeared down the corridor, leaving Eli alone with his thoughts. The soft hum of machinery filled the station, a constant reminder of the environment they inhabited. Eli resumed his cleaning, moving quietly through the corridors, reflecting on the lessons of the day. Patience, observation, and trust, these were the keys to success, not just for humans, but for anyone navigating complex systems and unfamiliar challenges. Eli paused one last time before returning to his routine. The station was alive, full of challenges, opportunities, and lessons waiting to be discovered. Humans had a place in this environment, not because of strength or technology alone, but because of their adaptability, ingenuity, and ability to act thoughtfully. The alien child's presence lingered in his mind, a reminder that trust could bridge even the widest gaps, and that collaboration could achieve what seemed impossible. Eli knew that the station held more mysteries, more challenges, and more opportunities for humans to demonstrate their unique abilities. And he was ready. With a final glance at the glowing corridor, Eli returned to his cleaning cart, pushing it steadily down the hall. He had learned, once again, that even in a world of advanced technology and alien intelligence, humanity's quiet brilliance could make a lasting impact. The orbital station had grown quieter as the day progressed, yet a subtle hum of energy ran through every corridor. Machines whirred in constant rhythm, panels glowed softly, and ships docked and departed in orderly patterns. It was routine, predictable, yet Eli knew that the station had changed. The events of the past days, the alien child, the adaptive doors, and the mysterious corridors had left an invisible mark. Humans were no longer simply janitors or assistants. They were quietly gaining respect, not through force, but through skill, patience, and ingenuity. Eli pushed his cleaning cart down the familiar corridors. His uniform, slightly worn, bore traces of grease and dust from hours of work. He moved methodically, observing every panel, every floor tile, every tiny detail. Routine was comforting, but today there was an unusual sense of anticipation. The corridors seemed alive in a different way, as if the station itself acknowledged that something important was about to unfold. The alien child appeared suddenly, glowing more brightly than ever. Its voice was soft but urgent. "Eli, come, there is something you must see." Eli paused, studying the child. There was no fear in its tone, only expectation. He nodded, understanding that this was not a request but an invitation. He followed the child down the corridor that had become familiar yet still mysterious. The walls shimmered with soft energy, and the floating panels moved rhythmically. Eli felt the subtle pulse beneath his feet. The station seemed to recognize him now, almost as if it trusted him. At the end of the corridor, the child led him to a large chamber, one that Eli had never entered before. The space was expansive, with high ceilings that shimmered with energy fields. Symbols floated in midair, moving in patterns that were both beautiful and complex. The chamber seemed alive, reacting to Eli's presence. Panels shifted slightly, aligning themselves in a way that suggested recognition. Eli knelt to examine the nearest control interface. He noticed immediately that this was more than a machine. It was a system designed for interaction, observation, and learning. Every sequence, every pulse of light, every shift in the floating panels seemed to test understanding, collaboration, and intuition. Eli smiled faintly. Humans were uniquely suited for this. They could observe, adapt, and innovate in ways that others might overlook. The child gestured toward a series of symbols, pointing carefully. Eli studied them, recognizing a pattern similar to the door he had fixed days ago but far more advanced. This system was adaptive, responding not only to actions but to intentions. It required trust, patience, and the ability to think beyond rigid sequences. Eli understood immediately. He began testing responses, observing, and adjusting carefully. As he worked, other station staff gathered at a respectful distance. Aliens whispered among themselves, and humans watched quietly. None dared approach. They recognized that Eli's interaction was special, almost sacred. The child stayed by his side, glowing brighter with every correct adjustment, providing subtle guidance without interfering. Together they were a team, human ingenuity and alien intuition working in harmony. Hours passed. Eli's hands were covered in grease, his uniform dusty, and sweat ran down his forehead, but his focus never wavered. Each sequence revealed more about the system's logic. Panels shifted in complex rhythms, symbols glowed in intricate patterns, and energy flowed in waves that required precise timing to navigate. Eli realized that this was a culmination of everything he had learned over the past days: patience, observation, trust, and problem-solving. Suddenly, the chamber pulsed with a soft alarm. Energy fields shifted, and panels moved to block certain pathways. Eli recognized the escalation immediately. The system was testing him at a higher level. The challenge was no longer just about understanding patterns. It was about anticipation, improvisation, and insight. He paused, breathing deeply, and studied the sequences. Humans had an advantage here: the ability to think outside expectations, to innovate when faced with complexity. He manipulated the controls carefully, introducing subtle pauses, adjusting sequences in unexpected ways, and observing the system's responses. Slowly, the energy field stabilized, panels aligned, and the symbols synchronized. The alarm ceased. The chamber seemed to exhale, a quiet acknowledgement of success. The child's glow pulsed brightly, a melodic trill echoing softly through the chamber. Eli allowed himself a brief smile. He had done more than navigate complex technology. He had earned the system's trust. It had recognized human ingenuity, patience, and problem-solving ability. Other staff began to approach cautiously. Aliens who had doubted humans now observed with respect. Humans whispered excitedly among themselves, acknowledging the quiet brilliance of their species. Eli did not seek recognition, but he noticed subtle nods and gestures of appreciation. The perception of humans had shifted across the station, not through force or authority, but through ingenuity and calm persistence. The alien child approached him, touching his hand lightly. You are remarkable," it said simply, its glow steady and warm. Eli smiled faintly. Words were unnecessary. The actions themselves had communicated everything. Trust had been earned, respect established, and understanding achieved. As Eli began to pack his tools, the chamber shifted subtly. Panels and symbols realigned to create a clear pathway through the space. The system, it seemed, had granted permission for deeper access, as if signaling that humans could participate fully in understanding and maintaining its complex environment. Eli realized that the station was not only alive but intelligent, and it recognized the value of human contribution. He moved carefully through the pathway, the child following closely. Together, they explored the chamber, observing energy flows, adjusting minor sequences, and stabilizing the environment. The chamber responded positively to their combined efforts, confirming once again that collaboration and trust could achieve results that neither species could accomplish alone. As the day continued, Eli noticed subtle changes in the station. Aliens who had once ignored humans now nodded politely, acknowledging their abilities. Humans who had previously underestimated their own ingenuity now whispered in admiration. Eli did not boast. He simply continued his work, quietly demonstrating that humanity's strength lay not in aggression or dominance, but in observation, problem-solving, and calm intelligence. Later, as he returned to his cleaning duties, Eli reflected on the journey. The doors, the corridors, the adaptive systems, they had all tested him, challenged him, and taught him lessons. He had learned that humans could navigate complexity through creativity, trust, and persistence. He had also learned that small actions, taken with patience and intelligence, could change perceptions and build understanding across species. The alien child appeared once more, glowing softly, and gestured toward the corridor leading back to the main station. We have learned much from you," it said. "And others will know too." Eli nodded. He understood. His work had become more than maintenance or problem-solving. It had become a bridge between species, a demonstration of humanity's quiet brilliance. Trust, patience, and ingenuity had transformed him from a simple janitor into a symbol of collaboration and respect. As they walked back, other aliens and humans began to approach. They did not speak loudly, nor did they demand recognition. Instead, they offered subtle gestures of acknowledgement, nods, smiles, and soft glows of approval. Eli accepted them quietly. The work itself and the results it achieved were recognition enough. In the following days, subtle changes continued. Humans were increasingly called upon to assist with tasks previously considered too complex for their species. Aliens consulted quietly, observing the methods humans used to solve problems. Eli continued his routine, cleaning, maintaining, and observing, but he now moved through a station subtly transformed by trust and collaboration. Humanity's role had expanded, not through force, but through patience, observation, and quiet ingenuity. The alien child continued to visit, often guiding Eli to minor anomalies or new sequences. Together, they explored the station's systems, learning, teaching, and stabilizing. Each interaction reinforced the same principle. Humans could navigate complexity not through technology alone, but through understanding, creativity, and patience. One evening, as the station rotated gently in orbit, Eli paused near the observation windows. He watched ships glide past in the distance, their lights reflecting across the metal walls. The child appeared beside him, glowing softly, its form radiating trust and gratitude. Eli smiled faintly, realizing that the events of the past days had not only changed perceptions of humanity, but had also created bonds that transcended species. Humans were no longer seen merely as assistants or bystanders. They were collaborators, problem solvers, and bridges between worlds. Eli had demonstrated, through patience, observation, and ingenuity, that even the quietest individuals could leave a lasting impact. The child's presence was a constant reminder that trust and understanding could achieve what force or authority could not. As night fell, Eli resumed his duties. He moved through the corridors, his cleaning cart rolling steadily, observing, adjusting minor panels, and maintaining order. The station hummed around him, alive, intelligent, and responsive. Humans had a place here, not because of dominance or weapons, but because of their ability to think, adapt, and act thoughtfully. The alien child waved before disappearing down a corridor, its glow fading softly. Eli paused for a moment, watching it go, and then continued. He understood that his role was far larger than himself. Through quiet patience, careful observation, and problem-solving, he had demonstrated humanity's value and earned trust in a world of complex systems and intelligent life. The orbital station continued its endless rotation around the planet, lights flashing, engines humming, and life moving steadily. And in its corridors, a human janitor quietly worked, respected not for rank or power, but for ingenuity, patience, and the ability to bridge gaps. Humanity's quiet brilliance had left a mark on the station, one that would be remembered in subtle ways for years to come. Eli moved down the hall, tools packed, cleaning cart in tow, and allowed himself a small smile. He had never sought recognition, and he never would. Yet the changes he had helped create, the trust he had earned, and the bonds he had formed with the alien child and the station itself spoke louder than any words. Humans had proven themselves capable, adaptable, and invaluable, not through force, but through understanding, creativity, and quiet brilliance. And somewhere down the corridors, glowing softly in the calm hum of energy, the alien child smiled, knowing that the human janitor had changed the station in ways that no one could have imagined. A door had been fixed, a system had been stabilized, and humanity had quietly, patiently, and brilliantly made its mark.